All right, a little bit more of a broad pod episode today, as I'm sort of tinkering with the content strategy right now. I'm thinking about going back to the broad pods. That way, I can slice up 3 or 4 different segments and post them on YouTube. Which, by the way, if the people aren't tapped into playing devil's advocate on YouTube, I would appreciate it if you would go give the kid a sub, give him a few thumbs up, help the algorithm. I think that I'm not a huge fan of YouTube in terms of the content platform that I want to consume audio on. However, it does seem to be by far and away the best strategy to reach new eyeballs. I think that podcasts, I keep saying I think. Don't believe that I'm not aware of that, by the way. I'm very much aware of it. I'm trying to improve. It seems as if that's a good substitute, that you really can't reach new audiences on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it may be, because there's not like a for you page or a feed you just go and scroll through, if you know what I'm saying. When you go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you either seek out the show or the shows that you're subscribed to and listen to the most frequently, like the 6 to 8 pop up. Whereas YouTube, you open it up, sure, you might see channels you frequently visit and watch from, but there's also just totally random channels that might be random videos or might be kind of related. I don't know how the algorithm works where it relates. If you watched a Missouri football video, then maybe a Florida football or Missouri basketball pops up. But the point is that you can reach new audiences. So I'm trying to slice up some of the content from the podcast, because the podcast is still the original form that I'm publishing and then I'm cutting and posting on YouTube. Anyway, that's a long detour to say go tap into the YouTube, and we're probably going to have 3 or 4 segments per pod so that I can maximize engagement, I guess you could call it, on YouTube. So the first segment is going to be about Indiana football here, and I really just got to thinking that it feels as if there's just this assumption that Indiana has arrived as one of the pillars of college football. And I don't want my words to be twisted here and say that I'm calling Curt Cignetti overrated or Indiana's going to fall off. If I had to bet, gun to my head, yes or no, are they going to keep competing nationally? Maybe not for national championships year in and year out, but winning 10, 11 games and making playoffs, I think they will. But it seems as if people are just lumping them in with Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and Texas. Well, Texas probably not fair because they're Oregon. I'm a skeptic at heart, and I'm also a numbers guy. I'm a numbers guy, not a math guy. Math's kind of more pattern recognition, and it's more boring to me. I'm a numbers guy, so I like sample size, and it takes a large sample size for me to make conclusions, and more often than not, I'm going to be late than try to be the guy who jumps the gun to be early. And with Indiana, they're sitting at a win total of 10.5 with the over at -112, the under -108. They're at plus 850 to win the national championship, with Ohio State first at plus 550, Notre Dame plus 650, Texas plus 750, Oregon and Georgia plus 800. Well, actually, Oregon 800, Georgia 850, Indiana 850, and then Miami 1200, and a big drop off LSU at 2000. So they're just up in a class with teams that have done it for longer and have more resources, more talented rosters on paper, that is. I know recruiting isn't quite as big, well, I say quite, not near as big of a deal as it used to be with the access to supplementation, and in Indiana's case, probably more the core of their diet than supplementation when in regards to their rosters, the portal. But again, just to me, it doesn't feel like they are in a position where we can just conclude that they have all these stars on the team ready to just roll over every single year. And I know since Cignetti's gotten there, they go 11-1, 11-2 after the playoff loss in the first year, but they really didn't beat anybody good. And they kind of inflated their ratings by piss pounding and beating the shit out of bad teams and not putting the foot on the brakes. But when they played Ohio State, they got smashed. When they played Notre Dame, they got smashed. And they finished 11th in SP Plus, about 11 points behind Ohio State. So they clearly weren't a national championship caliber team in year one. And I think they were a little bit inflated due to blowing out bad teams and having an incredibly fortuitous schedule being in a Power 2 conference in the Big Ten. And then last year, obviously they go 15-0, they win the national championship. Look, there's nothing I can say to discount what they did, but I still don't think that they were the most talented team on paper. I think they were an incredibly smooth operation, which should be translatable year to year for them. However, I think they struck gold getting Fernando Mendoza in the transfer portal. You know, he was definitely a pretty prized commodity, but he wasn't on top 3, top 5 Heisman lists going into the year. And I don't think it is, look, it's not impossible, but if I had to bet yes or no, I don't think that they're just going to keep landing Heisman winning quarterbacks out of the portal. Year one, Curtis Rourke was pretty good, but he was more of a game manager. Of course, last year, Mendoza. This year, they bring in Josh Hoover from TCU, who I actually really liked, and I think fits well with Indiana in the sense that he was very dynamic at TCU, but the reason he's in the portal and not in the NFL or winning 10, 11 games at TCU is because of his turnover issues. Now, I think when you go back and watch him, I think a lot of his turnover issues aren't as much of John Mateer, oh, I didn't see this linebacker standing right there, here's a pick six. To me, it's more, my defense is giving up 42 points, I'm trying to play hero ball, we throw the ball 50 times a game. Sawyer Robertson at Baylor-esque, where it's more just the matter of circumstances than a fatal flaw that cannot be fixed. I mentioned the 10.5 win total, and I think I probably lean slightly under, I guess, just because, again, it's tough for me to just think that they're going to be going 11-1 every single year. What I've seen is people have it almost as a 95 to 100% certainty that they're here and they are going to be a national championship caliber program year in and year out. I would put it more at around 60-40. And I think I think again, damn it. My expectations are more, this is a 9, probably not 9, a 10-ish win program year in, year out, more close to year one than year two. I think they're going to be a little bit better than they were in year one going forward, just in terms of being more competitive with the top end teams on their schedule. The Ohio States, they don't really have a lot of top end teams this year. Point is, they're going to be very good, but I just think we're being a little bit premature in crowning them as one of the top 2 or 3 programs in the sport. That's honestly the genesis of this thought. Is I've seen a lot of coaches drafts, coaches rankings, and while I would have Cignetti 1 or 2, I've also seen program rankings that have them in the top 2 or 3, and I'm just going to need to see it a little bit longer before I can do that. Now this year, the schedule, it's a joke again. North Texas, Howard, Western Kentucky, and Northwestern to open, then at Rutgers, at Nebraska. So they're almost, if they're anything close to the last couple years, they'll be 6-0 before they host Ohio State, go to Michigan, who knows what Michigan's going to be, host Minnesota, and then they have a sneaky little stretch of versus USC and at Washington, then versus Purdue. in hindsight, I think I probably might go over 10.5 here. Just it all kind of depends on what Michigan is, because if Michigan's more like what they were last year, they'll beat them. And the other two hardest games on their schedule, Ohio State and USC, they get them at home. Go to Washington, which could be tough depending on what Washington is, but this looks like a playoff team. However, the schedule could be one that dictates they have to win. 10 or probably 10-2 at least, maybe 11-1 to get in. But conclusion, I think we're a little bit premature crowning Indiana.